Hello beautiful people, welcome back to the channel. Pots and Petals here, everything garden and allotment related. It's Sunday morning, it's about 9:30, 10 o'clock, and I tell you what, we've got a much nicer day today than what we had yesterday. It absolutely chucked it down all day, so it's a little bit soggy down here, but that shouldn't stop us from getting through some of the jobs that I really want to get done today. Now the other thing I must shout about is we are finally in March. Now depending on where you are in the world and what you believe in, some people class the 1st of March as spring, and other people wait until the 21st to the 22nd of March, which I believe is something to do with the pagan calendar. Now I'm a little bit optimistic, so I like to class the 1st of March as springtime. So finally guys, we're in spring, and I tell you what, we've got so many signs around the garden, from daffodils, the tulips, we've got polyanthus popping up, we've got all sorts. So yes, it is a really exciting time of year. Now the jobs that I'd like to get done today, I've got a shed next to my shed which stores a hell of a lot of wood, but it's also been collecting rubbish and all sorts. So I do want to get in there, give that a little bit of a tidy up, because I do use that when I start transferring some of the plants out of the poly house into somewhere a little bit more cooler for them to start acclimatizing. So we're going to get in there and give that a good old tidy up. And I've also got quite a few seeds that I'd like to sow now that we're in March. So we're going to have a go at sowing a few of the flowers. We've got cornflowers, poppies, amaranthus, and we're even going to try some sunflowers as well. So we'll get those into some pots a little bit later on. And I would also like to try and sow a couple of rows of carrots. Now I've got plenty to pick from, so yes, we will try and do that as well a little bit later on today. Now I'm pretty sure there'll be some other little bits and bobs along the way, but first of all, you know the drill. I'm going to make myself a quick cup of coffee, and then we're going to sort out the woodshed. So come on guys. There we go, looking a lot neater and tidier in here. I can actually walk around in this little bit of the shed now. So we gave it a little bit of a sweep up down there on the floor, and then I've just tucked the wood over there on the left hand side with some of the bamboo canes as well, because it won't be long before we need to get those out. And then I've got a little shelving unit here which I'll just use for some of the seedlings as I try to acclimatise them from the poly house outdoors, because it doesn't get too warm inside this little side shed. And then we've just got a few bags of gravel down on the floor along with some compost, so it's looking a lot nicer in here, and hopefully I can start using it a little bit more as well. So whilst I was cleaning out the shed, I came across this rabbit hutch. I totally forgot about it, and I actually used to use this when I had the chooks, and they used to sleep in this rather than their coop, especially in the summertime, because I think it got a little bit too warm in there for them. So now that I haven't got the chooks, I need to think about what I'm going to do with this little rabbit hutch. Now a lot of you have been talking about a hedgehog house, because I've got the actual main coop, but I'm worried that it might be a little bit too big and it might start housing some rats rather than housing some hedgehogs. So this smaller little rabbit hutch that we've got here, I should be able to adapt to make the perfect little hedgehog house. So that's a little project to keep your eyes open for over the next couple of months. Next, we're going to sow a little bit of colour for later on in the year. So the majority of these flowers are going to flower sort of June, July time, well into the first frost, so October, November. And I've gone for a variety that hopefully will self-seed across the plot. So first up, we have got the peony poppy. Now, we did try these late last year, probably September, October time, but they didn't turn out to anything. So this is going to be a second sowing of these, and I just love those pom-pom frilly heads that they've got, and they should be beautiful bobbing around in the garden. Then next up, we've got amaranthus, also known as love lies bleeding. Now, these create really exotic, dangly long flowers, and they can grow up to a metre and a half tall. And amaranthus you can actually grow for the grain inside, but these are more for the actual flowers themselves. So hopefully we'll get a few of these to plant out in the garden. Next, one of my favourite flowers is the sunflower. Now, this is infrared, and as you can see, we've got all sorts in there, but majority of them are sort of those burnt reds, oranges, and yellows. So hopefully we'll get a few of these, and we can put these along by the fruit cage. Next up, we have got the cornflower. So we did try these late last year as well when we tried the peony poppies, but they didn't come to much. So this is a second sowing, and these are double mix. So we should get a variety of colours from the sort of reds, the fuchsia pinks, the salmons. There's also some bluey purples in there. So this should be quite an exciting mix to have, and will look lovely in the flower garden. And then one of my favourites is a Californian poppy. Now, when I first got the plot, these were popping up all over the place, but for some reason they don't seem to be coming back anymore. So I thought we could get a few of these sown, and hopefully they will self-seed. Now, I'm used to the bright orange ones, but as you can see, you can get those buttery yellow as well. So we're going to get these sown. Now, in here, I've just got some multi-purpose compost. I've gone through to get rid of all of those chunky bits, and we're just going to sow. We've got a line for each of these, which I believe is 8 plants in total. So let's get sowing these guys. Now, if you remember, I wanted to start making sure that I label everything. So I've already gone and wrote on the labels. So we've got the cornflower, the infrared sunflower, the peony poppy, Californian poppy, and then we've also got the amaranthus. So these teeny tiny seeds here belong to the amaranthus. And when you've grown the plant, when you give them a really heavy shake, all of these seeds will fall out. And these are actually what you eat. So they're a type of grain, I believe, and people grow them just for this. But I've never gone to the bother of saving all of that seed. So if you have got any recipes and you know roughly how many plants you're going to need, please let us know in the comments below. So these here are the cornflower seeds, and they remind me of tiny little brushes. But what I have done, because I've already sown them, is I've sown sort of 5, 6 seeds per little tray, and then as they do germinate, you can just split these up ever so slightly and plant them out in little groups of 2 or 3. Now, for those of you that are watching carefully, I've realised that I haven't got these the right way round. So these are definitely cornflowers that I've just sown, not Californian poppies. So better correct that before we get confused. And here we've got another diddly little seed. So this is a poppy seed. Got 750 seeds in that packet. I don't think I'm going to sow them all now. So we're just going to lightly sprinkle these over the top of the compost. And because they're so diddy, we're not going to need a huge amount of compost to put on top. So just lightly sprinkle it in and try to keep an eye on where your seeds are landing. I'm sure we all know what these are. So these are the sunflower seeds, and they're a little bit chunkier than what we've been sowing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and sow 2 per pot and try and keep them as far away as possible, so that when it comes to splitting these, you're not going to be damaging that root ball too much. So just 2 or 3 per pot, and that should be absolutely fine. Now, because these are a little bit bigger than our other ones, they will need a little bit more compost on top, just to cover them up when they start to germinate. Now, I've put 2 in there. We've only got these left, so I think I'm just going to try and cram 1 more in. We can always do some thinning out at a later date. And then finally, just like the other poppy seeds, this is the Californian poppy. So we're just going to sprinkle them lightly on top like we did the peony one. We're just giving this a nice cover of compost and try and pick off any of the chunky bits that land on top, because your seeds aren't going to germinate under a big old chunky bit. Now with some of the bigger seeds, you want to put a little bit more compost on top, whereas those tiny little poppy seeds and amaranthus, when we give them a water, that's going to cover them anyway. But we will just give them a little light covering. Now these were the sunflower seeds, so we want to give these a little bit more of a cover up than we have some of those smaller seeds. Here we go, that's all the seeds all nicely covered up, and now we just need to water them in to start that germination process. But I just wanted to show you this little contraption. So I got this off Amazon a few years back, and it's only a couple of quid, but it is a godsend. So when you're watering your seedlings, sometimes if the water pressure is too strong, then you can find that you'll be washing those little seeds away. So this just helps reduce the flow and makes watering your seedlings a little bit easier. So one job that I do like to do this time of year, and that is to fill my watering cans up, and then I leave them just inside the poly house, just to warm that water up ever so slightly, so it's not too much of a shock for those little seedlings. So we've just filled that one up there, and I'll take this little guy over and fill him up as well. So this is going to be one of my carrot beds this year. Now it's a raised bed and it's made from this polycarbonate plastic, and it really warms up the soil in here. So I do find that I get earlier crops. Now we've already got a few little garlic down on this side, but I'm hoping to get a good 3 rows of carrots in here. So let's go and have a little hunt in the seed box and see what carrots we're going to sow. We've got a Royal Chantenay 3. I'm going to do 2 rows of these, and then we've got the Nerak. Now these can actually be sown from February onwards, and I've never sown these before, so fingers crossed they shouldn't have a problem with germinating. Now the first thing we've got to do is give that bed a little bit of a weed and just mark out a couple of rows. So I've made 3 rows here, and I've done them about a foot apart, just under, because I want these carrots to have plenty of space to really thicken up. So we're going to do 2 rows here of the Chantenay carrots, and then we're just going to do 1 row of the Nerak. That's only because the Nerak has a lot less seeds compared to the Chantenay. Now you want to try and sow your seeds as thinly as possible, just to avoid you having to do too much thinning out at a later stage. Now that's not only to save on your seedlings, but also you don't really want to be attracting the carrot root fly, which will definitely smell your carrots out. Now I've never had a problem with them in this bed, because I have heard that they only fly sort of a couple of feet, a foot above the soil level, and I think this raised bed is a little bit too high for them. But it's always to be on the safe side, so as thinly as possible when you're sowing your carrot seeds. And then finally, we're just going to do the Nerak. I absolutely love the smell of carrot seeds. They're beautiful. I think people do save them and cook with them because they are quite aromatic. But again, we're just going to thinly sow these down this little row. And hopefully we should have some carrots come sort of June, July time. We'll just give these a very light cover over with some of that soil. Now, if it was really dry months, I would have watered in these little divots to begin with, but the soil is quite wet, so we'll just cover it up and give it a light sprinkling just to make sure that those seeds start to germinate sooner rather than later. Look, we've already got the first little tulips starting to show themselves. So these are the little miniature ones, but I'm going to have to move these because look, the slugs and snails are already getting to them. So I'm going to pop this just on one of the little tabletops to make it look a little bit prettier in the seating area. And hopefully by next weekend, these buttery yellow ones will also be in full bloom. But again, I'm going to have to move this because the slugs do seem to be finding them down here. So the great thing about being on an allotment is that when you bump into some of your plot neighbours, you sometimes get some freebies. So you're probably wondering what I'm doing with these twigs in my hand, but these aren't twigs. These are actually grapevines. And as you can see, they've got a lovely root system on them already, but they're currently in their dormant phase, but it won't be long before these start to bud out. So we need to go and find a home for them. And I'm thinking around near the fruit cage. So I've already got one inside the fruit cage, but I'm thinking about growing these up over the structure that we've already got. So we better go and plant these out before they start springing into life. So this is the fruit cage itself, and inside we've got all sorts from blueberries, gooseberries, raspberries, red currants, and like I say, we've even got a grapevine in there. But I am thinking about using this bed for mainly sunflowers and now also these grapevines, in the hope that I'll be able to trail them across this little frame here. So we're going to put one at either end. I'm going to use this longer one, which has already got quite a nice long vine on it already. I'm going to plant this in that corner down here, and then the two stubbier ones I'm going to go for one along the post nearest that side, and then we'll go for that corner as well. So let's get digging some holes and start planting these up. That is all we've got time for today, folks. I feel like we've got quite a few more jobs ticked off that very long list. There is something about this time of year and sowing seeds, whether that's beautiful flowers for your garden to attract the pollinators and the wildlife, or whether it's your fruit and your vegetables to grow everything that you need to eat for that year. It's just marvellous. And being a gardener and caring and nurturing these plants all the way through to the end, it's just something that you really can't beat. Now today we've managed to sow those carrots, so hopefully come sort of May, June time, we're going to have a few of those to start harvesting, and we've sowed a load of colour ready for June, July in the flower gardens. And I'm really glad I've been able to clear out that shed because that was looking a little bit of a mess and I wasn't using it very much. Now before I go, just in case she is watching, I do just want to say thank you very much to the plot neighbour for those 3 grapevines, and fingers crossed we'll have even more grapes than what we had last year. Now I'm hoping, now that we're in March, we should start to see things start to brighten up a little bit. It has been so wet here in the UK over the last month, so I haven't really been able to get down here both days at a weekend, but it's getting to that time of year where I really need both the Saturday and the Sunday to be getting jobs done. So if we do have a dry weekend, I will bring you down here both the Saturday and Sunday. So don't worry guys, I'll be back down here for another adventure very soon. But in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, all of that good stuff, and I'll see you down here next weekend. So take care guys, I'll see you later. Bye bye.